Welcome to Doctor on Call with your host, DocGriffon. The doctor will be with you momentarily. Our guests this evening are musicians Hillary and Quentin Thomas-Oliver of the industrial band Pony Trap. This is a talk show beyond that which is known to humanity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, between the pit of one man's alcoholism and the summit of his sobriety. It is the entertainment we know as Doctor on Call, the cure for the common interview. Pants are optional. Doc Griffin, paging Doc Griffin, you're needed in the OR. Stat.
And thank you very much, Nurse Wicked. Thanks to everybody for coming out this evening. I think this is going to be a very fascinating case. And this is a case that actually has a lot of documentation to it. So instead of just talking about the possible symptoms, which we'll be going over in a moment, let's go ahead and go to the video evidence. Yep. And that is definitely cause for concern, because I believe we might be taking a look at a dual case of extreme artism. And I think we need to be very importantly moving along. So let's introduce our guests for this evening. The creators, the people behind the band Pony Trap, and that would be Hillary and Quentin Thomas-Oliver. Thank you very much for coming on to the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. We're happy to be here to talk about our unique case with you.
It's nice to meet you, Doc. We're happy to be here.
Well, and you know, all seriousness aside, I spent quite a few weeks absorbing the case material, and I can say that what I saw was incredibly unique and original, and I certainly want to roll up the sleeves and go conversation deep on this. I'd like to start off with, because of course you are husband and wife. You are of a divergent, well, actually a convergent path, which brought you together. I'd like to find out where your initial love for music came from while you were soloing, so to speak.
Where did our initial love for music come from? For me, I don't know. I took a couple of years of piano lessons in elementary school, and I don't know that I ever seriously wanted to be anything other than a musician. It was really the only thing that was on my mind from at least middle school and maybe before that. Even though I didn't really have a lot of training in it, it was just a thing that fascinated me and that I wanted to be a part of. I think like a lot of people my age, Kiss was this huge inspiration where you get this idea that music is more than something that you hear on the radio. It's this kind of, it's this big show and it's this big involved thing. But it was really like freshman year of high school, I found a Sex Pistols record in a cutout bin, and a friend of mine got really into Adam Ant, and I bought a Bow Wow Wow record, and all of a sudden this whole punk rock world that I'd never heard of before that and didn't grow up with just sort of exploded in my face, and that really cemented it. Since then, with very little interruption, music in some form or another has been the only thing I've ever really taken seriously and done. How about you?
Well, my parents met in music school. My dad is, he can play anything with a reed. So he plays
Wow.
saxophone, clarinet, flute, piccolo, which is kind of anything he puts his hands on. He can make beautiful sounds with. And my mom is a really great singer and piano player. So I came from a house that was full of music. It was not necessarily the kind of music that spoke most deeply to me, but it was music nonetheless. And I used to come home from, my mom would take us to the symphony, and I'd come home and start picking out the parts on the piano. And she pretty quickly got me signed up with a piano teacher. And so I always had music in my life in one form or another. And kind of much like Quentin, high school was a big turning point for me as far as a personal appreciation of music is concerned. And I started meeting people with really widely varied interests in music, from punk rock to regular old rock and roll to metal. And the thing that really spoke to me, like the first band I heard that I went out and bought their album all on my own was REM. And that really changed everything for me. And I became a music lover.
Which one?
Appreciator. Document.
Oh, okay. It's kind of funny that Quentin mentioned Adam and the Ants. One of my warm-up songs, one of my get me in the mood songs is Stand and Deliver.
That's a great album.
Yeah.
That's on Prince Charming, right?
I think it's on Kings of the Wild Frontier.
Is it? Okay, fair enough.
I think. Also, when he did his solo stuff, I found, and I'm the type of person who is definitely, I wouldn't say tribal, but I do love to hear percussion mixed in, especially with strings, not necessarily guitar. And that leads me to ask, it usually when you hit your teens and you're thinking about doing a band and you want to do music, did you ever have the influence of like being in the school band or the school orchestra?
No, not even a tiny little bit. I was just completely other from that crowd.
Wow.
I was in the school orchestra in elementary school and middle school, and I played the cello. I wanted the biggest, most obnoxious instrument I could find. And I really liked about the cello was you kind of have to give it a hug to play it, and it just felt really comforting. So I did. I never had any formal training, but I played cello when I was really, really little in the orchestra.
Well, and honestly, that's how most musicians start off. The ones I know who were started incredibly dirt poor or not set up in a big city always had a tendency of, this is the instrument I like. This is the instrument, I'll, the old saying, play till your fingers bleed, to where you have to learn it and become in tune with it. How long did it take you guys to technically, find your instrument?
I played a lot of things in different bands. Well, that's not true. I played a lot of things, and then I played other things in bands before Pony Trap. So I played a little bit of piano as a kid. I played cello for a little while. I picked up the guitar and started noodling around my guitar. And then it was guitar for a long time. And then in my late 20s, I guess, I showed up to work one day and a friend of mine walked up to me and said, okay, we're in a band and you play the bass and our first show is in 10 days. And so I started learning how to play the bass really quickly and played bass in that band for a couple of years. And then there was a big drought between the next time I played in a band, and it wasn't until Quentin came along. And I really loved what he was doing, even when there were other people in the band before the robots. BR.
Oh, by the way, in our chat, and our chat is, of course, very well versed. One of our regulars, Water Jabber, says, yes, it is on Prince Charming.
I kind of thought so, but I'm not. I've never been really solid with that kind of information. These are battles I always lose with Hillary. I'm like, oh, the thing is that. And she's like, no. So anyway, awesome.
Oh no, I'm happy to be wrong.
I think it has more of those original Bow Wow Wow guys on it, and so it's a little more that kind of rumbly, Burundi beat sort of thing. Whereas Prince Charming, he really kind of embraces that. What they call that new romantic thing, that Duran Duran thing.
Now, I actually got a chance to see Adam and the Ants in, I think it was 1980, and In Excess opened up for them. Is there?
Wow, I bow down to you, sir.
Oh, that was a beautiful concert. I can say that. Was there one concert that, as a kid, set it off for you, or did you have the availability to go to concerts?
Well, I have a couple of answers to that, and sort of tying that in also to finding your instrument. Like, there are really two kind of pivotal concert moments in my life, and the sort of pivotal artistic moment that I ever had was the first hardcore punk show I ever saw, which was in Bloomington, Indiana, and that's going to be, I'm so old. Freshman year of high school, so 1982, give or take. And I saw De Kreutzen, just really grinding industrial punk rock band out of I think Detroit, but out of Michigan for sure. I think. Anyway, that just blew me away. And I'd already been like I said, I had this Sex Pistols album, and I had this Bow Wow Wow record. And, I was already kind of like finding my way there, which wasn't necessarily easy to do from a small town in Indiana. And then went down to Bloomington and saw De Kreutzen, and a bunch of local weird punk rock bands opened up for him. And man, that blew my mind. I'm all in for that. That's the thing I'm doing. And then secondarily, the concert that really kind of changed my life was a play, but it was a one-man show with a violinist doing Paganini. And he played a bunch of the Caprices and talked his way through Paganini's life. And I didn't grow up with formal music. I didn't grow up in the orchestra. My parents liked music a little bit, but it was mostly Johnny Cash, which is A-okay. But I was never, all I really knew about orchestra music and strings was like, you know, the movie Amadeus and, you know, the Four Seasons every time you get in an elevator, which is also great music. But I'd never heard classical music sound kind of violent and wild like that. And I particularly like that kind of dark solo performer thing, that kind of, you know, a Hank Williams, Robert Johnson kind of thing. And so that really broke a thing in my face. And
so it was the primal appeal.
yeah,
you,
absolutely.
You were finding the through line in all this music.
Yeah. And I left there, and I'd never touched a formal, you know, a string instrument in my life. I've been playing bass in bands, punk rock bands, and actually even metal bands into the late '80s. But I left that, and I was just like, yeah, that's totally what I'm doing. I'm gonna go get me a viola and figure that out.
And how was that actual process? I mean, how long did it take you, or are you still uncomfortable or comfortable with the instrument?
I'm eminently comfortable with that instrument. I don't want to necessarily say that I'm good at it, but I've definitely, you know, I've done the 10,000 hours, and I'm happy and comfortable, and I feel like I understand it to a certain degree. That was a wild thing, because coming from scratch, and I was also like, I was sort of marginally employed at a bar, so I'm practicing all day, and then I'll come home and I'm practicing it from 2 to 4 or 5 in the morning, and I just got really obsessed. And for about a year, I just played and played and played and played, and then, you know, even so, one of my favorite cliches was I started getting all the books from the library, and I would take them and, you know, to this bar job where I was working. And one of the owners said to me, "He's like, why would you even want to do that? It takes 5 years just to suck." And yeah, it turns out it takes 20. But I just really obsessed on it, and I was never prepared for where it was going to go, or the path it was going to take me down. Because like I eventually ended up getting a performance degree like in my 30s. I was older than most of my professors, and it was just a really, really sort of Colonel Kurtz environment at music school. So yeah, I got comfortable, but it took a while, and it was a long, strange path.
Well, there's a thing that I say every single show that I've run. It's a through line for me with everybody that I've interviewed, that you have to flex your Peck, which Peck stands for passion, effort, and commitment. If you don't have those three things, then you're never going to find what you're actually looking for. A lot of people, you know, have a really hard time with that C word, with being able to commit and put the time in to do it. Especially, you know, you can put forth a little bit of effort and get something done, but it really takes true commitment to get there. At what point in your musical career did you say, you know, this is my all in spot? This is where it's everything or nothing.
Golly, I don't know. As far as viola goes, I think that really just kind of happened nearly from moment one. Like I was still in a band at that point playing bass, but I essentially stopped being interested in anything else. Like from the moment I got a viola, yeah, it was hilarious. I was doing Suzuki stuff on cassette, and I didn't have a cassette player, so I was playing it on an old school answering machine that I had. And,
I've been there.
Yeah, and so I don't know. For me, in from the time I dropped out of my first take at college, which is about 8 minutes after I started, I just used college as an excuse to get out of the Midwest.
That's not a bad excuse.
It was a very expensive plane ticket, and it totally worked. I would say just because it's been the thing that I always wanted and I always wanted to do. even through thick and thin, and mostly thin, for whatever that's worth. For me, the curious moments in my adult life have been the times I've kind of decided not to. Like, there've been this couple weird stretches where I was like, I think I've had it with music. I'm not going to do that. So I was like a software engineer for like 2 years. It's like, no, regular life is dumb. I'm going to go back to music.
Well, sometimes you have to pause to breathe.
So for me, for whatever it's worth, it's kind of to varying degrees and again varying levels of success. It's kind of been all in since I was free to make my own decisions.
And Hillary, what was your all-in moment?
It was really slow and gradual for me, and I can't really point to a moment. I am not, like, music is not the center of my life the way that it is for Quentin. It's not the way I make my living. It is definitely more something I do just because I like it. And like, I like doing it with other people. I like the people that I make music with. Love, one of them, as a matter of fact.
Oh, I was joking about the robots, how I was trying to eliminate people.
It's, for me, it is a very social thing. I really like the people that I get to make music with. That's a big part of the draw. But am I all in? I don't know. I don't think that moment's come for me yet.
That's completely all right too.
Yeah. This is actually sort of a fascinating moment for that, as we really try and ramp this thing up and kind of like, now we have a thing, and sort of try and see where that goes.
Yeah, I really want that moment to come. I'm looking forward to it, and we've invested a lot of time and energy into making that moment happen, and I can't wait. That'll be really awesome. I'm certainly going to be ready for it when it gets here.
Well, and also I think it merits saying that I believe that, and I'm going to be adding their YouTube channel to my Criminally Undersubbed in the description. But if you have not, we'll play at least one more tune. We'll play one more video. But all the links to get to know Pony Trap a little bit better are down in the description. As always, in the descriptor box, we've got the official website. We also have the official Twitter. And, of course, the YouTube channel, which needs to have more of you go over there right now and do some subbing. And to be able just to follow the band. And I think you can also see in the videos that there's evolution to the music going on as well. And to me, I find that incredibly fascinating. Also, just to let you know, since we're kind of at the bottom of the hour, at the top of the hour, of course, we'll be taking your questions from the chat room. So please make sure and have those available when we get to the 9 o'clock hour. Or, well, 9 o'clock hour time, about 30 minutes normally. And that, well, music is such a diverse thing. And it seems as though you two were kind of traveling along the same highway, but not necessarily taking the same off-ramp. How did you two first come together? When did you meet?
This is a good story. We first met in Austin in 1998. We were...
It's 20 years from like right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's right about this time.
Weird.
Yeah, anyway.
So about 20 years ago from now, we met working at the Electric Lounge here in Austin. I'd been working there for a couple of years, and then one night this guy walks in, and I was like, who's that? He's pretty. We instantly started flirting and had a very intense white-hot connection, and then, like a big dummy, he decided he was going to leave Austin and move back to Indiana.
Yeah.
Yeah, good job. So I was like, this was, the late 90s. Facebook isn't a thing. I only barely have an email address, and I there was just no way we were going to stay connected. I was like, well, that's unfortunate. I really liked that guy. I'm never going to see him again. Too bad. So 12 years go by. Meanwhile, we are living our own independent lives with all kinds of other stuff going on. And then in 2010, it was November-ish of 2010, November, December.
Just after Thanksgiving.
It was like early December. I had just moved back to Austin from California. And I was back at my old job, my first day back at my old job. And I'm sitting down in front of the computer, and I've got a little bit of downtime, and I open up Facebook, and like they have brains of their own, my fingers just start typing in his name into the search bar. I hadn't been thinking about him. I don't know where the impulse came from, but suddenly there he was, and I was looking at a picture of him, and I was like, oh my God, it's that guy. He's still out there doing his thing. And so I just added him as a friend without kind of sending a message or saying hi or anything, just add friend. Let's see what happens when I push this button. And a little later on, you accepted my friend request, and you sent me a one-word message that just said, wow. And we started exchanging messages, and then phone calls, and then those phone calls were like 7, 8, 9 hours long.
Yeah, it was insane.
And he got some pretty catastrophic phone bills.
The Hillary apocalypse, the phone apocalypse.
And then I was like, why don't you come to Austin for New Year's? If you don't already have plans, come see me. And so he came to visit, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess I should inform some of the audience who are in their 20s. Back in the day, especially back in the 90s, there was this thing called long distance that wasn't free. And we had to pay for it, and pay for it we did.
And the phone apocalypse was just like the cell phone era, the modern cell phone era, where you have so many minutes you can use, and when you go over it, you get charged like $1 billion a minute. Yeah. And we were just spending ridiculous amounts of time on the phone.
Well, that's proof positive that there's a relationship starting.
we were all in with that moment.
Now, so the formation of the band, it happened in your current stomping grounds in Austin, Texas, right?
Even that's a bit of a narrative. Like,
okay,
this music project is this sort of thread that weaves through, again, most of my adult life, at least starting with that Paganini show that I was talking about. I instantly had this idea that I wanted to do kind of a sort of neo-acoustic industrial thing on a classical instrument with drums. Like I was envisioning largely what we're doing right now, with a sort of koto drummer sound, and me doing this kind of hyper-technical but sort of also dark and ugly string playing thing over it. I always envisioned A, that it was going to be 2 human drummers, and B, that it was going to be all acoustic. Like, it was so funny because at first I was like, this is not going to be I'm not going to go through an amp or anything. It's just going to be this weird kind of campfire, dark, way up in the hills of Wallachia kind of thing. And that was the whole reason I learned to play viola. That was the thing that was on my mind. And then, like, you're not going to learn to play viola without learning a bunch of classical music. Like, it's just not going to happen. So the whole time I'm getting better and sort of winding my way toward music school, which I didn't even know I was doing for 5 or 6 years or 7 years. This project is going in fits and starts. I've written some tunes. I've actually done some performances with a couple of people. My very first ever viola recital featured one of the Bach cello suites, some Bartok duets, and like 3 of my own pieces with a couple of drummers. Oh man, did I have no idea what I was doing. But and even in college, like I studied composition, and this thing is kind of like constantly boiling. And when I graduated college and I ended up in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is where I was living when you and I reconnected via the intertubes, I was even then still trying to get this off the ground with some musicians I knew, and so this is it's the narrative, it's the whole thing that ties everything together. So in a way, like the band is, however, that's going on. That's 25 years or so, right? It's in a way this project is that long, but also in a way it's really not. Like I had this disastrous South by Southwest 2010 gig with people. 2011, sure. And there was people involved, and it was really bad. And Hillary was actually there as a friend, as my partner, and not as a band member. And that gig was just this like snapping point. It was like, oh, I can do this with machines. I know I can build machines to do this, and I don't have to ask anybody how to, they want to do it or how they would like to make everything I want to do worse.
Well, and yeah, I mean, bands are a harsh dynamic. Sometimes you could be the best singer-songwriter combo and the worst of friends. Yeah,
it for sure can be. And when I was playing in bands, like, these metal and punk rock bands, like, it's the case. A joke I've made over the years is like, never quit a great band with a bunch of assholes to be in a crummy band with your friends. Because I mean, it's a really intense environment. And in the end, hopefully what matters the most is the creative output. So, at this point now, Hillary and I are together, and I'm codging together these machines out of 2x4s and leftover springs and motors that I've pulled out of Goodwill stuff, and I finally get it a little functional and it starts moving, and I can't remember exactly the moment of it, but I worked in this little string shop for a year and a half or so when I first got here, and we got you a cello, and there was some like, oh yeah, maybe I might like to get back into cello, and then I was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a cello in this band I'm doing? With these robots, but I can't remember the exact how that became a thing. It just kind of all of a sudden was like the first show with robots. Like Hillary was part of the band, and has been ever since.
And at what time did you decide to jump the broom?
I was pretty adamant that I wasn't going to get married.
It was one of the first conversations we ever had.
I made that pretty clear. From right up front, I was like, I love you, and I think you're probably my soulmate, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you, but I don't want to get married. Like, getting married is, I think, sort of a useless social function. Like, I don't see the point. Let's just live together and be happy. And he was on board, thank goodness. And
I had at that point been married twice already.
Yeah. It was old hat for him.
No, anyway.
So that, we've been together for a year or so, back together for a year. And we went out to dinner one night, and all night I was feeling like I was in a boat on top of a very deep body of water, and felt really powerfully compelled to jump in and see what was, how deep does this go? And I really wanted to submerge myself in it and really feel it. And so we got home from dinner that night, and I was like, so maybe we should think about getting married. And I think your head exploded.
Yeah.
And so we talked about it like all night long. And
it was hours that we talked. Yeah.
We decided we were going to go ahead and do it. And that was it. We were married like 6 months later.
Yeah. Well, we woke up the next morning. It was like, just to be clear, just want to kind of touch base with last night. We agreed we're getting married, right?
Yep.
Now, one of the things that's kind of one of my pet peeves is when a woman will hyphenate her name. Now, in this circumstance, I am 100% okay, because if people didn't look at the actual description, the last name is Thomas-Oliver. Can you go into a little bit about how you decided that both of the names were important to hold on to?
I don't know that there was really a moment.
In the friendliest way possible, I would say it was nearly an edict.
Was it?
Yeah, you were like...
Oh,
yeah,
by the way,
yeah.
I'm not taking your name. I'm hyphenating, and I think you should too. Was that kind of how that went?
It was essentially, yeah.
I don't remember it happening that way.
She has some very good friends who are my friends now as well. Mm-hmm. The Jones Dilworths, mm-hmm. Who went that way, and I don't know. I didn't have any macho problem with it, and why not? Sounds awesome. Well, it's a really nice way to just be like, hey,
we're a family.
We're really in this.
Yeah.
Well, I'm completely okay with the two-way street thing. I had a friend that I went to school with who literally hated his family so much that when he got married, he took his wife's surname.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
Why not? There's no rules about it. It's just custom. And like going back to the whole I don't want to get married thing, the whole the woman taking the man's name was a big part of what I don't like about marriage.
Because it's a submission role.
And because it makes the woman property. And that's kind of the origin of the whole institution of marriage is the woman and all of her assets become the property of the man. And that has always been a point of contention for me. I'm like, well, that's no longer how we think about marriage mostly in America. So why bother? Like, what other function does it serve than to enrich the male?
Well, and that's why I said, I mean, the whole hyphenation thing, if it's just done on the woman's side, is a pet peeve of mine. Mm-hmm. But you guys are actually showing what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and I appreciate that as well, because that's to me, if I can soapbox this for just a minute, as a person looking from the outside, it's not as much of a marriage as it is a partnership. It's a do you, and you both did. And so any type of, nomenclature that runs around, however you want to name it, that's a pretty powerful symbol of I'm going to stick by you and you're going to stick by me.
That was our commitment to each other, for sure.
Yeah, and we do a pretty good job of, what you're talking about is actually a great description of how we lived up like.
And I can only think that you two have the ability to argue like no other bandmates and then make up for it very well afterwards.
We have to. Like, we've agreed that that's part of what we do. If we disagree about something, we argue about something, whether we're bandmates or not, we're partners, and that partnership is for life. And so we kind of do just have to get over it and get past it and work through it. We can't the band can't just break up.
Right. I want to come back to the name thing for one thing. That's something that struck me as hilarious was a couple of years after we got married, we saw a time machine. And I was just like, oh God, if I had known this was like some giant cultural joke, I might have been like, no, it's all weird.
I don't remember there being a thing about.
Oh, there's a whole thing about one guy hyphenates his name in there. Super weird about it.
I'm as clueless.
I saw it afterwards.
Oh, okay. I think it's a good name.
I think it works out really well.
I think it's a really nice name.
I enjoy saying it.
Yeah.
Well, because it doesn't go alphabetically. Was there a coin flip or?
No. I think it was just the way it sounds coming out of your mouth. Like Thomas-Oliver just rolls a little more nicely than Oliver Thomas. Although I did have a friend who lobbied really strongly for Oliver Thomas because then my initials would be HOT. And she just a powerful argument in favor of Oliver Thomas.
But we actually did kind of say it back and forth a whole bunch just to figure out which one we like better going which way.
Mm-hmm. So it was really an aesthetic choice.
And the music that you're getting into, that you've been able to perform. Now, I love the phrase that's up on your website, industrial music for modern primitives. Was that something that you set out to do? Because you were talking about how you enjoyed the guttural, the tribalistic aspect of music. Is that the exposure that you wanted to have with it?
Yeah, I would say that I'm really lucky as an artist right now to be creating a thing that's really very much exactly what I wanted it to be. That's evolved, you know. Again, like I was saying, I had originally, well, obviously never intended it to be a robot band, but also, you know, I had this whole thing about it being, you know, super acoustic and being anti-electricity in the beginning. But grand scheme of things, the sort of the ministry influence and the coda drummer sort of tribal style influence, and the sound that we're making is just exactly what I'd always intended to do. It's really, in a lot of ways, you know, kind of the most over the top thing to say, but it's totally true. It's the realization of sort of my lifelong musical fantasy. Like it's really cool to just go out and play a thing that represents the art that you always wanted to make, especially when it feels like there was such a long road and a bit of a struggle at times to get here.
So it is safe to say that you were the spearhead to the project. Hillary, how did you work yourself into it? Was it a, hey, here's the plan that I have, and what you know, what are you going to add to it? Or did he have things written out for you? Or were you just like, no, I think this needs to be here? Was it a cooperative?
The songs were mostly already written. Quentin had already written a ton of songs that were being performed by Pony Trap in other configurations with other human beings by the time he and I reconnected. Y'all had made some recordings, and so I was really familiar with a lot of the songs that were already kind of in the set list for Pony Trap. And when you moved back to Austin and transitioned to building robots to play with you, and we ended up with a cello around the house, it was really more of it kind of came about very organically. I did not change any of the songs. I just added a different texture to them. I mostly wrote my own parts, but there were certainly songs where you had written them out for me because you had a very specific thing you wanted to try. And like anything, you write it out and you play it, and it changes as your hands kind of get there. You know, once you get your hands on the song, the actual physical mechanics of playing it change your part. Because what's easy to write down and hear in your head is not necessarily the easiest or most natural thing to play. But mostly he does the songwriting. I don't do any songwriting for Pony Trap, which I'm perfectly happy to have that division of labor. I really like the songs that he writes, and I like getting to explore and find where I fit in, where my instrument fits in.
And I do have Velocity queued up. I think this would probably be a proper time to play that out as well, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see if I can get my boomer skills a-working.
Yeah, sure.
And this is Velocity by Pony Trap. And really, I think that's probably the best way to actually introduce the third member of the band.
Robots.
Swarmed onto the music.
There we go. And I would say it is definitely a unique choice. But coming from the aspect we've kind of discussed, that there has to be art to the music that you do. Was this something, the human element that you weren't finding?
For me, mostly it was just about realization, and I don't know that I was. And kind of a thing that comes up all the time. Sorry, I haven't said it's a complete sentence since I started, but
we do work in incomplete sentences.
Not really in one way, in one sense. I'm not really trying to replace human drummers. Like, I was just trying to get the thing that I wanted. And I think as far as human elements go, to be perfectly honest, the thing I was trying to replace was disagreement. But the thing that they do, you know, it's something we touch on a lot when we talk about them. Our music compositionally lives in a really odd space where probably 90% of it's four on the floor, kind of straight ahead, pretty industrial. You know, that's a lot of what we're doing. But all of a sudden there'll be a measure of five in there, just because that's what felt right to do. A great example is a tune we wrote. It's kind of a cover tune called Unconditional, which is by a band called Prong.
Okay.
But I learned the riff wrong. So I learned the riff in 13 just by accident because that felt right to me. And there was a really funny moment trying to show that to a people drummer and get a groove going. And he's just like, what? It was making him so mad, and finally had to count it through for him. And, you know, for better or worse, I'd never even noticed that it was in 13, the way that I was playing it. So that kind of thing where these, you know, just because they feel right to us, there's going to be a block of four measures that's in 13, or Lullabies, it got this thing where it slips from 3 to 6, and then all of a sudden there's a measure of 4 in there. And I think the main groove in that even is in, you know, a 3 and a 4 and a 3 and a 4. So there's a lot of these kind of math rock style elements in there. And the place where that gets tricky with people is the kind of drummers who want to and are able to play that sort of math rock stuff traditionally want to do it like all the time. Like, they want to be constantly sort of challenged and moving forward and playing in this kind of jazz, Zappa, who knows what kind of realm. And that's not, our goal isn't to be that, isn't to go that road. It just so happens that feels right to us sometimes. And then the sorts of drummers who want to play the kind of just straight ahead power rock thing that we do in our weird configuration generally aren't super keen to just throw a measure of 5 in there randomly. Like the tune, one of our newest tunes that we just got a recording done for, but there's no video, and we posted the recording per hex. It's not in any time signature. Like I forget it was just a groove that felt right to me. And then when I went to write it down, I mean, it's all over the place. I think it goes from 9/8 to 4/4 to a 5, and then a couple measures of 4/4 again. And it was just the thing that felt right. The Hindemith that we do, there's a Paul Hindemith, a movement of a Paul Hindemith solo sonata that we do, that I play with the drums. And I tried to teach that to a drummer once, and it's just a disaster. Like, it literally has no time signature. It's just this.
It's all feel.
Yeah, it's all feel. It's 3s and 2s and 3s and 2s and these really, really super weird groupings. Yeah.
So rhythm in Pony Trap is a very fluid concept, which is really hard to find the right drummer for, as one might expect. And the great thing about the robots is they don't care.
Yeah.
Like they don't give a shit what the time signature is. They will play absolutely anything we tell them to play, which is beautiful. We just tell them what to do and hit play, and they do it. It sets up a really interesting master-slave dynamic. Like, once we actually get on stage with them and we hit the play button, they're just going to go. They're not going to wait for us. They're not going to notice if we make a mistake and kind of, in a friendly way, give us a chance to catch up. Like, we just have to go and hang on for dear life. So
I would think playing with automation would be incredibly unforgiving.
Yes, it's like playing with a metronome every time you pick up your instrument. There's no room for error. So we've got to practice it in really, really well, or the wheels come off. We've set the stakes really high, but we're getting just exactly what we want out of these machines, and that makes all the invested time and effort 100% worth it. Like, I can't think. I mean, maybe there are. I'm sure there are plenty of musicians out there who are getting exactly what they want out of their band, but we get it every single time.
And I can see somebody with an MIT degree sitting back and trying to figure out how you rigged the set of drums together. How you I know you guys have a nickname for your drummer.
Yes.
And please share.
Well, there are actually 3. So the big tall guy, who's the one, the one that makes the big splash, the one that you really notice, his name is Dot Man. And then the 2 smaller ones that we affectionately call the twins, because they're reasonably identical, although you can't tell them apart. And they're always running in tandem, so that there's a replication, there's a backup for anything. Their names are Alan Turing and the Mechanical Turk, which are great nerd references.
Yes. I passed the Turing test once.
Nice. Fantastic.
But only once. I don't think I could do it again. Now, I did find a recent one that you guys posted like 3 days ago, and later on, I'd like to go ahead and play that one with your permission. It's the tune "It Goes Quiet in My Head."
Yeah.
But just wanted to make sure and let people know we are coming up to the top of the hour. So please do have your questions ready for Pony Trap for both Hillary and or Quentin. I'm sure both of them are equally able to answer since they are partners in crime. And I do have to mention this. I think my wife was crushing on you when you were back in high school.
I don't know what to say about that.
I don't blame her.
Thanks for.
You have wonderful taste.
She's over here giving me death eyes. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, I feel when I listen to music, it definitely, I can't say that I dislike any form of music. Well, with the exception of maybe clogging music, because that kind of gets on my nerves. But you can feel the energy in it, and I won't call it primal, but I mean, of course, heavy percussion always makes people think of a primal, like a drum circle, something like that. But when you add in the strings, you can hear the passion and the energy changes. Now, is this something that you did on purpose for the art? Was it something that you'd stumbled upon?
Part of the drum sound, I'm going to approach it from that angle, and maybe because that's how I've been understanding it. Like, a big part of what changed about the drum sound that evolved was when we first built, the very first drums were all mallets. So it was a very precise kind of single arm motion. Well, they all ran in pairs for whatever that's worth. But so it had this very kind of precise ictus to it, this real, snappy moment where the beat happens. And what we found with those machines was they were oddly mechanical.
They were a little too robotic.
There you go.
So one of the things that we worked on, because a people doesn't play, super robotically. There's a lot of feel to it. There's a lot of, oh, I want to sit in the pocket here. I want to lay off the beat here. Now I want to push onto the beat and rush forward, even if you're not really changing the tempo, but you're making this, kind of feel alive. And that's a little bit of controlled mess to it is what gives a lot of percussion its good feel. So we started playing with ways to make the beat less sharp, less mechanical, less metronomic, less robotic, but still be accurate. So one of the things that's where we end up with this kind of marching band wildness that our drums have that really has driven, recent composition and the way that we sound right now. It sounds like we're playing with 20 drummers instead of these 3 machines. So finding that kind of controlled chaos as the machines evolved has really affected how we write and how we play, I think.
Well, yeah, I can say because I've listened to everything online at least a couple of times, and the robotic nature seems to have been exercised from your percussions. And to me, I thought that was just a mind-blowing achievement.
Well, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. It was something we worked really, really hard on.
And you kind of agonized over how to make it happen. And the original design of these, so we instead of having an arm come down and strike the head of the drum, now we've added spinning motors with flails attached to them that instead of a sound, it's drrr, and you get a little fat sound for the strike. And that you really had to think that through. You spent some good think-staring time coming up with that idea. And then even the design of that element evolved over time, where they were a little fragile at first. They were a little dangerous. I think they were originally like a metal nut with a piece of shoe string through it.
It was attached to an RC car wheel.
Yeah, and then like some tape, and those, they come off and they're flying out into the audience at a zillion miles an hour. But
it did happen,
and it's very frightening. Like when they fail in sort of this spectacular bloodletting kind of way. No one has ever been harmed at a pony trap show, just for the record. But the early on, the potential for it was startling.
More
than your average rock band, that's for sure.
So getting away for it to make that sound and still and
be safe
and not be fragile, like.
And the one thing that I thought of the first time I saw one of your videos I had seen a long time ago. I got to see live a Chinese drum corps.
So fun.
Mm-hmm.
Where, you know, they were just hammering it out, and everybody there was, you know, I counted at least a dozen different types of mallets that they were using on the mini drums that they were using. But I always thought that type of precision has to, and I don't mean this to sound in a bad way, had to have a certain amount of sloppiness to have a humanity to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it really does.
And that's what I get. I mean, if you close your eyes and listen to any of the videos, you would still swear that there's a drum corps, that it wasn't, you know, a mechanical rig that was putting forth all this percussive sound.
I think one of the biggest compliments we get, and I think we're lucky enough to get it on a fairly regular basis, is everything's battery powered, so we'll take them out. One of our favorite things to do, like during South by Southwest, is just drag them downtown and run them, you know, and then talk about them and maybe play a little bit with them. It'll happen to us pretty much every time we take them out, where somebody will come around the corner and be like, "Holy cow, I was sure I was coming around here to see a drum line." Mm-hmm. And it's just you with that one, you know, floor tom with all that stuff stuck on it. Like, thanks. That feels pretty good.
Oh yeah, back in the day when I thought I had talent as a teenager, we used to do parades with color guards, and at the very end of it, all the drum corps would get together and just drum out in a parking lot, and that's what listening to your music brought me back to.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really great. That sound has evolved in a way that we hadn't at first anticipated, and that we're really pleased with and proud of.
Mm-hmm.
And just to remind, please go ahead and start loading your questions up for me into the chat, and we'll ask some questions for Hillary and Quentin. I do want to make sure, since we're right at the top of the hour, make sure if you want to hear more or know more about the band, all the links are down there. There's the official website, the Twitter, and the YouTube. I do have to apologize because the broadcasting of the music is not so great, but people know that I have a really crappy PC. I'll say this once and get it out of the way. I've got a GoFundMe to get me a better rig. That's in the link too. Down in the descriptions. So if you want to kick something that way, I'd certainly appreciate it. Because, you know, having a crank start for your PC kind of sucks. But also, in the same vein, my prescription for additional entertainment down below is a dozen other channels that really do fun content that a lot of people don't know about. Anything from conspiracies to the daily topic, to just basically friends shooting the shit with each other. I recommend all of these channels. Go like them, go sub them. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But then again, it's a free show, so suffer. Yeah, I think I had somebody chastise me that I've already hit all the questions that they had. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about programming. I'm guessing it's done on a basic, well, not a basic computer program, but it's all primed through. Well, I tell you what, let me just back up and give you the floor on this one.
Quentin, how did you program the robots?
Well, Hillary, that was a fantastically interesting story to me.
I'm sorry, guys. I know it's kind of a press junket question, but I know that's what they're asking out there.
We honestly do love talking about this stuff.
Absolutely.
Like anything and everything robot, like As long as there's a microphone pointed in our face, we have plenty to say. So no worries.
Yeah. We were just doing the thing.
We were helping you out.
Well, please speak your speech.
So it turns out, like, we are certainly not the only people out there building robot musicians. And it turns out that from everybody we talked to, when we were first getting started, like, we didn't know toots about building no robots. Like, it was just fresh, brand new. Like, I know it's a thing that can be done. I've seen them, right? Captured by Robots is out there. And then we saw an art installation in Denver that was actually really inspiring. It was, just a few little things on the floor, but they were playing for real. And so we started talking to people and asking them questions. And like, I actually emailed the guy from the art installation in Denver. I was like, how did you do that? And anybody we could think of. I went to the robotics group here in Austin, Texas. I found them online and showed up one night. And the very first person I talked to had actually been for years a maintenance guy for the Chuck E. Cheese band. And I was like, dude,
Wow.
I want to make the Chuck E. Cheese band, except awesome. He's like, the Chuck E. Cheese band is awesome. And then he's like, come outside. I got some eyes in the trunk. So it turns out that there's an accepted way to do this that tends to work best, and it's to use a MIDI interface and attach it to pneumatics. So I started fiddling around. I actually paid a friend of mine to give me a couple lessons in how that style of MIDI interface works, and went to another friend's house, and boy, did he try to sell us hard on pneumatics. He was shooting his potato gun out into the woods, and
they're not wrong.
Right.
We were very, very excited about what we wanted to do, and we didn't want to delay doing the thing long enough to learn a whole new way of doing things. We wanted to get started right now. And so we decided we would get started with what we already know and see how far that would take us. And we don't know anything about pneumatics. We don't know anything about MIDI. We know 12-volt systems because we've worked on our own cars, and we know written notation, music notation. Quentin knows that from music school. So that combined with his experience as a software programmer, 15 years ago?
Just a good long time ago, which speaks to the technology we're using here.
We just started cobbling it together from there.
Yeah, and also we had some core values, core things that we wanted to make. There were kind of three things. One is that they had to be portable, they've got to be powerful, and it had to be off the shelf. And pneumatics certainly would give you power, but it's not very portable, and it's not very off the shelf. It's all anytime you're talking about building a pneumatic system, you're talking about building something custom. So after fooling around with the kind of some of your traditional MIDI interfaces, part of it was also like, I just don't think that way. Like I don't think about music in this sort of the kind of DJ-esque way that those interfaces are generally lead you down. Now it's true. I know now, you can do notation with them. But at the time, at least the ones I was playing with, the translation on that wasn't super great. They're really designed to kind of build things in the way that that we all think of as a MIDI interface being designed. And it's just not how I think about music. I tend to think about music in notation.
And my first impression of it, I have a friend who works for a fireworks company, and they have their setup to where they've got all their mortars completely rigged out.
Yeah.
And then they have a program, and they just hit go.
Yeah. Say that last bit again, because I was cross-talking you. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. They basically wired up all the mortars, and they had a program, a sequential program, and it was rigged up to they had them rigged up to songs. So when a certain part of the music cue would play, it would kick the mortar, but it would kick it about 2 seconds earlier than the actual music, so it would sync up as it exploded.
Nice, that's fun.
So I was thinking it was something like that.
And it really is. Like, so I wrote a piece of software. So the everything that we do has been written out in sheet music, electronic sheet music, like in a piece of software that's similar to Finale. So I wrote a piece of software that would just go grab that data file. So we write it out in sheet music. All the drum hits are notes on the staff. And then my software goes and grabs that data file and then reads through it like music. And then it spits out serial communication to an Arduino. Just turn this thing on, turn this thing off, turn this thing on, turn this thing off. And then the mechanisms are all 12 volt. It's all battery powered. It's power drills and car parts.
But that's amazing though.
In our early days of trying to figure out how to translate data into movement, right? Like how to get the Arduino chip, like we could make it turn a light on and off. How do we get it to move something? That was a big trick for us. And so we started going to Goodwill. You started going to Goodwill and bringing home anything with moving parts, especially if it was battery operated. So we ended up with remote control cars, with hedge trimmers, with anything with a motor and a source of power. You would bring home and we took it apart to see how they had made it move. And we learned a lot. It was very fun and very educational. And we, tried a geared system early on, and we were just stripping gears left and right. We would have had to make custom metal gears in order to make that system work. And we finally, and it just wasn't very practical for our purposes. And we finally took inspiration from a kick drum pedal that it uses the chain, and there's a wrapping and unwrapping of that chain, and that's what makes the mallet go up and down. And that's exactly how our system works. The motor fires, and it has a spindle on it. And as the motor spins, it wraps a string around the spindle that draws the head of the mallet down to strike the surface of the drum. And then it just retracts via a spring. But boy, we had so much fun taking things apart to see how they were engineered.
The hedge trimmer was actually, and we took tons of things apart. Lots of vacuum cleaners, just pretty much any power tool you can think of. The hedge trimmer was really informational because the thing I was expecting, and it's funny, like straight up engineers will look at our stuff and they'll talk about the solenoids. Where you get your solenoids from, and I'm like, you are looking at a brush motor, man. So everything's a brush motor, everything's a spinning motor. And I had anticipated from the get-go, and I'd been advised to figure out how to use solenoids and how to build them or where to find them and how to that's the sort of logical thing. A solenoid's a motor that just operates straight, like a doorbell ringer.
Lateral movement.
Gotcha.
And we took apart a hedge trimmer, and I was expecting to find some sort of massive industrial grade solenoid in there moving that thing back and forth. And and sure enough, it's a brush motor. It's a motor spinning, and it's just spinning a thing that's spinning a wheel with one little pokey thing. My words are failing me. Yeah, a little axle, and spinning an axle on like a spirograph.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
Oh, I do have to do a real quick sidebar here.
No
one of our regulars, Bass Trap Kayla, wants to know, what is a pony trap?
Well, Kayla,
if that is your real
name, what's the one thing everybody wants when they're a kid? What is the symbol of all of your dreams? What, forget all that. I want a pony. And we're trapping them.
Yeah, gently, humanely, live trapping.
Sure, yeah, totally.
Yeah, just set an apple with a big box and a stick.
Right.
And when they go in, you just kick the stick.
Bingo.
Floor apple.
Okay. So, sorry. So now you found that not going, you went mechanized, but not overtly complicated to it. You basically pulled the things apart.
Yeah.
And did it. I mean, only thing I can think of is grassroots MIT. You know, rip it apart. Let's see how this thing works, and let's see if it's going to be useful. How long of a process was that?
We had the first functional drum, which was 2 mallets, and still to this day, that's the most complex machine that we have operating. But we had that going with the software in basically what's its current form in about a year.
I think it was like 8 or 9 months. It was a pretty short period because that was kind of the only thing you did for a while.
It was a pretty intense year-ish, 8 or 9 months-ish. But that's how long it took us to really get the concept going. And then, you know, now the project's on probably about year 6, and they're, you know, overall as an overarching project, it's considerably more complex
and more stable.
Yeah,
that's maybe the single most valuable innovation over time is how to keep them from breaking.
See, that would be my number one paranoia.
Well, and they break. You know, it's and earlier they broke a lot, and later they broke less. But you know, the number one cure for that's replication. Like everything runs in tandem. Nothing's ever on its own. You would hardly notice any of the failures unless it's one of the big gags. When one of the mallets fails, like if a spring breaks or something, you can see that. Like that's pretty obvious. But otherwise, you're not going to see it and you won't hear it because everything's backed up.
Wow. Yeah, I would think that you would need a backup to a backup.
Yeah, we do. You know, we do everything. Everything happens twice.
That's good so
far. Jolly Rogers Bilgewater asks, which is the sexier instrument, violin or cello?
Well,
cello.
And of course, because I don't play violin.
He plays a viola.
Viola. We're always super weird about that.
Hilariously.
So viola, clearly the sexiest instrument. But yeah, between violin and cello, definitely cello.
But they can coexist. Your band is proof of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So who gets who gets the big task of being roadie? Do you guys have roadies?
Oh, yeah. So that's another part of the spec. When we've done some big shows, like as we've gotten kind of these good looks and we've gotten some interest, we've done some interestingly large things. Like we did this festival in Las Vegas, and we did the premiere party in Hollywood for Ron Howard's Genius. So when we do something like that, we take some people, but everything's built so it comes apart small enough that one person can carry it and it can fit through a normal door. Everything, including the 12-foot tall guy, both the twins, all our amps, all our instruments, all our batteries, which is a lot of our weight, all fits in a 6-foot pickup bed with a camper shell. Like it's definitely Tetrised in there, but and it's funny because that's a thing that comes up all the time. I think if people didn't look at our rig and assume that it cost us $50,000 to move it 2 blocks, because it's the very first thing somebody says is like, how much is it going to cost me to get the robot there? Surprisingly little.
Well, I'm sorry. Did I miss it? What's the tonnage?
I just weighed it. Every single thing we own weighs 837 pounds.
Wow, that's amazingly light. But then again, in my idiot brain, I wasn't thinking, drums are hollow.
The drums are hollow. And again, we made the effort. And that also stems, in fact, the exact same show where the bullet shot off. I had built these and only used for that show, but sort of precursors to the twins, the sort of more complicated, multi-dimensional single drum. I built this really complex, weird-looking thing that we call the cat tree because it was
horizontal, or
yeah.
it was vertical. So it rose up into the sky. It was
had all
these different levels to it, and it looked like
very much like a cat tree.
It looked like we had designed it for the cat.
And so we're going to load up for the gig, and it wouldn't fit through the door. So I literally, it's like, okay, get out the tools, and taking that apart, and like, now it fits through the door. So that's where we get that spec from. And from that moment, like, it was a really conscious effort. Again, that one person can do it. Like, the entire setup is a one-person job. It's better with people. Like, when we did the Nat Geo thing here at South by, they had a like super duper professional, union crew. We were out of the truck and up ready to play. We were completely broken down in the truck, from the truck to the stage ready to play. I think it was 25 minutes. Like, that was magic.
Wait, did you say 45 minutes?
25.
25.
Yeah, we
Holy.
were up and on stage and playing in 25 minutes, and that's broken down in the truck out back in the parking lot. But, I mean, if I do it by myself, and it's an hour. Because, again, sort of another classic thing is, like, I didn't want it to be an all-day installation. Like, it's got to be reasonably portable, and it's a lot of stuff to set up, and it's a big job by myself, and it's a big job. But it's doable, and it's not super bad. We can be set up not much longer than normal band tapes.
Well, and I think now would be a perfect time, because we've had more people come in to give a little visual demonstration. So let's go ahead and prime this up. This is one of Pony Trap's latest. It's called "It Goes Quiet in My Head."
Steel. That's how I feel. Say what you want to say. Something's pulling me farther away, where I am.
So those who didn't know, there's the show. And I would think that I don't want this to sound insulting in any way, but I would think that your music can be listened to, but it seems to be, you need to experience it, because there is an audio and a visual component that knocks it up a few more notches. have you all considered basically making like a DVD or a Blu-ray available for concert performances?
Why, yes, we have.
We have indeed.
We completely agree that the fullest and most ideal experience of our performance is visual as well as auditory. And we are 100% okay with that. We are working with a friend to film we have an hour-long show called Promethean Waltz. The guy who's singing in It Goes Quiet in My Head is in the show as kind of this Southern Baptist preacher, snake oil salesman, narrator, Tom Waits character. And then we have 2 human drummers on stage with us, and a lot of really beautiful video backdrops. And
the 12-foot tall robot actually gets built up through the course of the show.
So he gets built on stage as the show goes on, which is really cool. He gets brought out bit by bit. And we're working on filming that on a professional sound stage and creating a DVD of our show. So that'll be a thing that happens.
And then another thing that we're planning to do in the upcoming season, so for next year, is to actually take that show around on tour.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, right now we play as more of a kind of a band format. Although we often bring Chip and do a kind of have that character sort of be part of a show. But yeah, we definitely have a pretty big visual element that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Victor Rand's asking, couldn't you have just built them to be self-propelled? I think that's no.
Well, the next robot, the joke is always, and it's maybe a joke, but the next robot is the one that packs the truck.
Yeah.
Well, you might as well build one with cold fusion.
We'll get right on that.
But let's talk about the feedback you got, because I did read the one article when you performed at South by Southwest, and they listed Pony Trap as one of the 10 things you had to go see.
You're talking about the Esquire magazine?
Yeah.
Blurb that we got. Yeah, that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, like the top 10 winners of South by Southwest 2016.
16, yeah.
We were on the same list as Drake and President Obama. Did not see that coming.
Yeah, so we work, I work. This is actually a little bit of a difference between you and I, but I work on this sort of eons timeline. Like, I'm kind of always working and always sort of moving ever more slowly toward the sun, hopefully. But things in the last year and a half or so have really started to kind of bubble up, and really kind of starting with that mention. The funny thing about that particular mention was, I didn't know that someone from Esquire magazine had stopped to kind of check out what we were doing. And that year we didn't even have a show.
Yeah.
I was just out on the street with the robots, like showing them off and talking about them. Met Jimmy Vaughn. I remember whatever that's worth. He was very nice. So yeah, and that was also one of the days we got interviewed by NPR, by Audie Cornish. So yeah, that was kind of a watershed year where we got all this kind of notice, and it was funny because it was just us on the street with the machines, and then like that led to the Nat Geo thing, and then sort of blossomed into most of the cool things that have happened since then.
Yeah.
Well, and even I saw the photo of director Ron Howard with the Pony Trap hat on.
Yeah.
And then I went and dug up the footage that he shot. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, that was a fanboy right there.
That's okay. So,
but by the way, it comes directly from that Esquire article.
Yes.
But,
So we played this party for National Geographic to celebrate the upcoming release of Genius, this show about Albert Einstein. And they had done this whole installation at a bar downtown, Activation, I think is what they call it in the business, where they take over a bar and they kind of rewrap it in National Geographic
phenomenal
logos. It was
amazing.
really a very well done kind of thing. And we get this email. We were at Sunvolt at the Scoot Inn, and you walk up and you show me your phone, and I read this email, and it's someone from National Geographic asking what our fee would be to play this private party, and both of our heads explode. And we end up playing the party, and we go on right after a panel that included Ron Howard, Brian Grazer, and Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about Einstein and this show that Ron Howard has produced, and he directs the first episode. And then the next thing that happens is we go on. So he's, we don't know this at the time, but Ron Howard's up in the balcony watching us play and films a little bit of us playing and kind of like does this cool pan around the bar to set the context and the scene, and then comes back to us, and there's our logo big as life. And,
yeah, it's pretty fun.
And I don't think I was the one who brought it to your attention. It was a couple days later, I think.
Yeah, I think you'd just been Googling us.
I had just been like, well, I wonder if, anybody posted anything about us in the world from that show.
A lot of attention that night.
A lot of people we freaked a lot of people out at that party. It was really fun. Did. And so I wake him up. I basically crawl into bed and I'm like, honey.
You totally did that.
Hey,
that's exactly how it went.
Hey, you should probably wake up and see this. And I show him the phone, and it's Ron Howard's Twitter feed, and there's a video of us. And we both basically laughed maniacally.
Yeah. And then and that show led directly, like, the Nat Geo crew, who have all kind of since become at least sort of Facebook friends with us, But they were
and he was literally geeking out the whole time.
So we end up getting invited to come to LA and play the premiere of the show. To play the premiere party. Because we did this private party thing in Austin, and Ron really liked us. And so this was a couple months later, and one of the things we knew we had to do was we knew we had to bring a pony trap baseball hat.
Because Ron Howard wears hats.
Because that's his thing. And so we only made a couple of them, and we spent like an outrageous amount of money to just get 2 of them made. Maybe it was 4. But it cost us like $50 or something to make 4 of these hats. Absurd. And we're like, I don't care. I would pay $200 to make these hats because one of them is going to Ron Howard's hands, right?
Hey, next time if you have to do something like that, I know a guy who knows a guy.
Well, it turns out our across the street neighbor makes swag for bands and stuff, but we didn't know that at the time. So then we go do the thing, and it's the end of the night, and like we play, and Ron Howard's like at the front of the stage, just like staring at the robots,
totally geeking out on the
with
robots.
this huge smile on his face, like really checking them out, and he gives us a thumbs up, and we're
just dying,
grinning like fools, like we can't believe this is happening. It was so cool. And then after the show, I grabbed one of our Nat Geo friends, and I was like, hey, I know he's long gone, but do you think you could get this hat to Ron Howard? And they're like, oh yeah, totally. And we don't know if that's just going directly into a trash can or like what's going to happen, but we've done our part. And then fast forward like a year and a half, and I have like an alert for Pony Trap set up through Google Alerts, and someone on the street had run into Ron Howard in Beverly Hills and like snapped a selfie, and Ron was wearing our hat, and this guy just happened to tag Pony Trap. He did hashtag Pony Trap in this Instagram post of him and Ron Howard, and that was how it came to our attention. And once again, I think I just texted it to you. I was like, so this happened. and we both, again, laughed maniacally, like, is this really happening? I think I couldn't take my eyes off that photo because it was so surreal.
Yeah, because I don't know, it's a pretty fun thought to think that, there's this really creative, interesting,
totally inspiring,
Academy Award winner.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind of an amazing artist.
Just sort of into your thing like that. Yeah. I don't know. That just feels pretty good.
Yeah. And so, like, not only did he not throw away the hat,
but yeah, he's just
and not only did he keep it, but he actually wears it out in the world. Like,
It's
he
pretty
likes
fun.
it. And then, like a couple of months after that,
That's just like last 2 weeks ago.
a few weeks ago, he posted a selfie of himself and a couple of his kids
at the Dodgers
game, and he's wearing the Pony Trap hat. So like he wears it on a regular basis. And I'm like, what? How is that even a thing? And how does that even happen to us?
That is incredibly validating because it's literally artist to artist.
It's really cool. It's really, really cool. So yeah, like some really cool, weird stuff has happened for us in the last couple of years, and
well,
we're just gonna try and harness it and see what happens next. Who knows? No idea.
Now we got a question about if you could talk a little bit more about plans for touring, what you've got on the schedule, maybe for the end of the year, or what you've got in store for 2019.
So for the end of the year, we have only one out-of-town gig, and it's at the Houston Maker Faire, which is a big maker fair, and we're very excited to be going and presenting out there. We'll play some music. I think we'll probably talk about some robots. So we'll be out there for a whole weekend.
Yeah, it's sort of kind of a weekend thing.
And that's in October, like 14th and 15th.
Yeah,
something
that's about
like
right.
that.
Whatever that kind of, the second weekend of October.
Yep.
I had to stop you for just a second. Being a Midwestern boy, I don't know what a maker fair is.
Okay.
We didn't either. So this is a world that we had to find.
So the maker fair, it's like a science fair for grown-ups, where anybody who makes anything is invited to come and show it off and like talk about what you make and why and how, and share your expertise and meet other people who make stuff, and you get all kinds of inspiring ideas from just interacting with other people who are changing the world, taking what exists and reconfiguring it into something new. And it's everything from taking apart old pieces of clothing and remaking them into something different, to people who build with Legos, to people who make robots, to people who do leather working. It's everything and anything. And it's, of course, appropriate for kids, but fascinating for grown-ups. And so it started out in the Bay Area. There's a magazine called Make Magazine that does all kinds of tutorials on just how to manipulate the things in the world around you and repurpose them. And it's very, very cool. And we did a tutorial for Make Magazine on how to build a robot drum. And we played, we did a presentation in San Francisco at the Bay Area Maker Faire a couple years back that was super fun. And we've done Maker Fairs in Austin and San Antonio and out in Macon, Georgia, and New York City. We did the World Maker Faire. That was really fun. And that's been like, that community of people has been one of the most delightful byproducts of having robots in the band. We found ourselves part of this community where we get so much support and inspiration. Like, these are really cool, interesting people doing weird, wonderful stuff. And I just could not be happier to have found ourselves a part of that world.
If you, like, looking through the video that you showed for Velocity and kind of the bridge section of it, and also there's a little bit of the fire effect. So in the bridge of Velocity, in the middle of the tune, you'll see this whole kind of cutaway to where we're playing at night with all this fire going on. I think it's like 1 million BTUs plus or something, Tim told me. Anyway, crazy. And then, we also took some sort of vanity shots with them that you saw in the second video or in the third video for It Goes Quiet. But yeah, we met this guy, Tim Deegan, through the Maker Fairs here in Austin. He's he's just a mad genius in the best sense of the word. He's a great guy, and he's clever, and he's smart, and he does all these cool things. Well, this year for the Austin Maker Faire, he was like, he shot me an email like 6 weeks out or something. Like, Tim, Tim's the opposite of me. Like, I work on this sort of dinosaur timeline, and Tim works on the like, no. Like 6-8 weeks before, he said, I'm building these drums that run on fire, and I'm wondering, could I hook them up to your drums? We're like, yeah.
We can totally make that happen.
Absolutely work that out. So we built a connection system, and we were actually driving his drums from our drums brain while we played, and it was so magical.
It was really great. And that's the kind of thing that happens in the maker community. Like, you'll just make connections with someone who does something totally badass and crazy, and suddenly you're collaborating and doing something really very, very cool. So that's the Maker Faire community. And beyond...
and that's how art's made.
Right?
Yeah.
You cannot make art in a vacuum. It's really, really hard. It's a lot more fun when you get to bounce ideas off people.
And I wanted to see if you had a pick for another video that we should play for the people.
The Bridge is my favorite. We already played that one. And then Velocity. What's next?
What's the one that's on the ramp? Is that also Velocity?
On the ramp?
That we filmed on the skate ramp on the half pipe?
Oh, that's Waltz.
Let's do Waltz.
Matter of fact, I actually have that queued.
All right.
Well, there you have it.
Like the sneaky individual that I am. Okay, let's go ahead and take another listen and a look.
All right.
And once again, please pardon my boomer technology. I try. There we go. And
Mothers dance their steps. Halting, it is time. Not stop. Press on in our own way. Time.
And so there we go. I had to make sure to stop the bloody thing.
Well,
I'm almost too old for this. There we go.
To the end of the question there about do we have any plans for touring? And the thing I would throw out into the universe here is that up until this exact moment in time, kind of what we have, our approach has just been let the jobs come to us. Like, I think pretty much every performance and every job that we've done has found its way to us, as opposed to the other way around. We haven't really made its big outward push to do things. This is what we're doing right now. We are working on again would be the 2019-2020 kind of college theater season to take our show around and to backfill that with you know, maybe just kind of regular band shows and venues and stuff. So I'm going to throw out that while we don't have a bunch of stuff booked for this yet, that if anybody out there has thoughts or ideas or offers, please feel free to go find us on our website and have a chat.
Well, and stay tuned, because a big part of the work we have planned for this fall is to book a tour. So we may be coming, especially to the Midwest, around this time next year. So,
well, I'll be honest with you. I think the college circuit is a brilliant move, especially in the Midwest, because a lot of people just don't think of the Midwest as being acceptant of different forms of music, but they could not be more incorrect.
Well, we're really excited about some of the interest that we've had from universities and performing arts centers in that neck of the woods.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I don't know. You would go over very well in the hipster communities on the seaboards. I don't think that would be an issue either. I could see you guys playing up and down California and from New York to Atlanta.
Yeah, we're all for it. So yes, both reach out if you have any thoughts, and stay tuned and see, because this is definitely be literally the first time we've actually made the effort to go out.
Yeah.
Oh, and wifey also wanted to know whether or not you'd be playing South by Southwest for 2019.
Hopefully. We just submitted our application like last week.
Yeah, so hopefully, well, we'll be doing something.
Yeah.
Whether it's a kind of off-Broadway show or more street performance or an official showcase. We did have an official showcase last year, and that was really cool. So hopefully we'll be another one for this year, but we'll do something for South by. And an enticement for anyone to want to come see. We're actually building a newer, bigger, stronger version of the robots as we speak.
Oh my God, you guys. I'm so excited about this new machine. It is going to be huge and beautiful and awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
last
please go ahead.
Huh?
Please go ahead.
Oh, that was it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All the drums have now arrived at our house that are going to be a part of this new machine, and it's going to be awesome.
Well, now, I have my own personal answer for this question, but Jack T. Ripper, the Gulf City serial killer, brings up a very good question. Is industrial music viable in this age of mumble rap and regurgitated cookie cutter synth pop?
Well, I think you kind of answer your own question there. Like, yes, you need an alternative to the music that all sounds the same. You know, music has become so homogenized over time. A lot of the same structure of songs you see again and again, the same chord changes. It's all so boring. It's very, very monotonous. And
yeah, if there's any one video I can point out, there is a comedy troupe called The Axis of Awesome. And they do one video called 4-chord songs, and they literally rip through, I would say, at least 3 dozen songs that use the same 4 chords. Wow. That have been popular in chart toppers. So yeah, I think you're dead on. I think people really do want to hear something different.
I'm going to throw another idea on top of that, you know, and for me, it's this is the art I want to make.
Whether it's popular or not, whether there's a place for it or not.
And I'm lucky enough to already, as it is, in you know, through a lot of different avenues, but I'm lucky enough to already just make my living playing music and doing music all day long. So that's pretty cool. And really, I would love for it to just be pony trap. Like, I would love that to be the only thing I had to do. So it certainly is, you know, the idea of it being viable, I hope so. But mostly, you know, we're just making the art we want to make, and we're going to throw it out there. And if it sticks, awesome. But we're also just going to do our thing.
Yep.
And it's the rare line to be able to straddle, basically making music art and art music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a Herculean task. And I think that being able to pull it off, which you obviously have done, and you've done through many different methods to achieve the art that you want. I think that speaks volumes for what you've got going towards the future.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. I hope it comes of the belief and the blood and the commitment, and I hope that all comes through.
Well, and if nothing else, I mean, you've got the evidence. You're guilty as charged. If they go onto your website at ponytrapmusic.com, they will see the blend. They'll see it happening. Not only to be able to hear it, but to be able to feel it, that you've taken robotics, and I won't say humanize them, because we're not talking about sex dolls here, but you've been able to put a humanity to the music, even by using mechanical means. I think that's what stands out to the music. That's one of the reasons why I had to listen time and time again, just because I'm like, there's a little bit of an erratic nature to the beat, but it seems incredibly organic. And I think that's in wrestling terms, I think that's what will put you over, because you have a gimmick to propel your art for people to be able to see art in a different way. And that's a really hard thing to do nowadays.
It is, yeah, it's certainly the case that we definitely have a marker. We've thrown a flag up that draws eyes.
And it was very much accidental. Like we never intended to be a robot band. That was never part of our goal. We just wanted to make music. We wanted to make the music we wanted to make the way we wanted to make it. And the best way for us to do that was to build machines to help us. And one of the unintended consequences of that has been people are really into these machines. They're really super into them. And it gets attention for the music that it might not have gotten otherwise. So we'll take it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful gimmick. And by gimmick, I'm not being derogatory in any way, but to be able to be self-expressive, and let's face it, we are caught up in a technological society where a lot of people base more of their trying to think of a decent word to use, but for lack of a better word, they express more value nowadays in technology than they do in actual creativity. And Pony Trap being able to put those two things together, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say that is definitely a recipe for success.
Well, we're definitely trying to put the art into the technology.
Yeah.
And again, bring on the success. We're making the art we want to make, and we're just going to see how far we can get with that.
Well, and I know we're coming up to the top of the hour. One of the really important questions that I haven't asked yet is, what impact do you want your art to make? If it could be a societal thing, or even just with one person, what type of impact? What do you want them walking away from a show thinking?
I have an answer for that. And it is that whatever it is that you want to do, whatever your artistic pursuit, Start now. No matter how well or ill-equipped you believe yourself to be to reach your goal, start now. Take the first step. Start with what you know. Don't let the fact that you don't know how to finish the project stop you from starting. It is the philosophy that has driven us forward, to just begin, to take the first step and then the next and then the next, that got us where we are. And I think that quality is one of the most valuable qualities an artist can have, to just begin and see how far you can get with what you know and learn what you need to know to move forward as you go. But to begin, get started, take that first step, go, do the thing.
And do you have a follow-up for that, Quentin?
Yeah. Simply stated, be yourself. Find your tribe. Don't let the tribe that you happen to be in right now define you. Our stage show has this sort of loosely coalesced narrative, but a direct narrative nonetheless, about getting up and going and finding yourself. And literally, like, the reason we ended up building that 12-foot tall robot was specifically for the show. And he gets built on stage, and it's really, hopefully a metaphor for building yourself. So, be yourself. And it can sound trite and it can sound easy to say, but it's a damned hard thing to do.
Yeah, because when you do art, and we interview a lot of artists in a lot of different mediums. And the thing that always comes back is a lot of self-deprecating humor, but they're out there and they're still doing it, no matter what type of coping mechanism that they're using. Right. They're still getting out there and they're getting known. And I honestly can only see bigger, badder, and better things coming. Like I said, I think your music has an integral hook. It is primal. It is visceral. It's something that you're not going to hear in an elevator, but you would probably hear it if CBGB's was still around in a place like that. Because I think that's where music is headed now. I think people are tired of it. I think people are basically, they don't want to hear anybody being auto-tuned. They want to see the flaws in order to appreciate it a little bit more, and just to break away, put the headset down, walk away from the PC and go see a nice show that's going to entreat you both auditorily and visually. And I think you guys have a great combination with that. And, if you do decide to kick that tour into full gear, you certainly do have a welcome spot back on the couch. I do want to make sure to plug, of course, if you have any other questions about the music and the madness that makes up the greatness of Pony Trap, the official website, ponytrapmusic.com, is down there. Pony Trap's official Twitter, and of course their YouTubes. Please check them out. There's also a few really good documentaries that have been included on their YouTube channel that you should definitely take a look at. And basically support the art that supports the lifestyle. And I know it goes back, I know you guys are tired of hearing me saying it, that we creators are built on those three things. So flex your peck, have your passion for what you're doing, make the effort to do it, and then once you're there, just be committed to seeing it through. Because if you never finish the commitment on it. If you never put enough effort into it, if your passion cannot sustain, then you'll never see how great you can be. So I'm off the soapbox. I do want to make sure, Hillary Quentin, did you have any other words for the audience or anything else that I haven't plugged, which I should have?
I would encourage folks to follow us on Instagram at Pony Trap Music. We make a post every day that's robot related, and I think if it's probably the best way to get to know us through social media, because you really get to see the robots up close and the process involved in building them, and so that's something I'd recommend people check out at Pony Trap Music at Instagram.
I think the plug I'd make is OZ, which is an online news organization, did a great little featurette of us at last South by Southwest. And we can't put it in a YouTube playlist because they haven't loaded it to YouTube yet. But if you can find, Pony Trap and OZ, you can find that on Facebook or you can find it on their website.
That documentary series is called Life Interrupted.
Life Interrupted.
So if you Google OZ, OZY, Life Interrupted, and Pony Trap, it'll pop right up.
And it's pretty cool. And they did a really nice job of sort of capturing the thing that we're doing and the way that we do it together. And again, I'm just going to follow up on the sort of overarching message of what we do, which is do your thing. Like, go out there and do it. I think Hillary's word, begin.
Go make art.
And when I get that link, I will make sure and post it down here in the descriptor. I think this is the one. Let me see here. Yep, that's the one. Okay, guys, bear with me here for just a second, and I will go link this in because I think it's important. Oh, no, go ahead. I'm just doing this look at it.
They did a really nice job with that.
And, okay, there we go. I really shouldn't have failed that typing class either. I didn't know. I thought I'd be a coal miner, for God's sake. Okay, there we go. Now that's live in the link too for the Instagram. If I can hunt the movie down, I will certainly link that in there as well. But I certainly would like to thank not only the fans for coming out, but also a big thank you to the members of Pony Trap, not only for demand, but of course for Hillary and Quentin. And remember that Thomas-Oliver is perfectly acceptable. So if you're thinking about jumping onto the bandwagon, putting a ring on that finger, then consider that as well. And I'll go ahead and just do a real quick wrap up. Once again, another great month is coming to a close, and we are going to be closing out September with your pal and ours, Disky Fringo, another internet YouTube creator. He'll be dropping by next Tuesday. Starting off in October, we've got a real good October coming. We have two-time Eisner Award writer Mike Barron. He'll be sharing some thoughts not only on comic book writing, but also now that he's a novelist as well. If B-movies are more your cup of tea, tune in on October 9th when we sit down with director Jim Wynorski, who was also the man behind the 80s cult classic Chopping Mall. He also did Deathstalker 2, the whole Munchie series. And, of course, what he's been known for recently is he did the Witches of Brestwick and the Bear Wench Project.
Nice.
And then, of course, we have the Killing Joke, another great YouTube content creator coming in. And to round out the month of October, the creator, producer, director of the Friday the 13th series, Sean Cunningham, will be sitting down and talking to us for our Halloween show.
Fun.
And oh yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting show. But then again, I have never failed to have an interesting show because all the guests that I have are interesting people. And of course, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas-Oliver, you were no exception. I certainly do appreciate your time with us this evening. And, the diagnosis seems complete. That autism is still definitely not a bad thing. So make sure and stay in touch with them on the links below. And this is the doctor saying the office is closed.